is a Fox News alert. The world's still stunned by the latest London terror attack carried out by 3 knife-wielding men in a van. At the moment, at least 7 people are dead, 48 people are injured. Let's go to London for a live update.
Howie, this is where the incident occurred, just over my shoulder, about a few blocks behind me. And at this hour, we're seeing a number of people showing up here to present flowers and other objects at a makeshift memorial. As for the terror threat this hour, it remains at severe. It has not, and I underscore that, it has not been upgraded to critical as it was after the attack in Manchester. And now we're getting our best look yet at the white van that caused so much of the carnage and mayhem. Take a look at this still frame. This is the vehicle in question. This vehicle was heading south over the London Bridge last night when it plowed into pedestrians. It jumped the curb, coming to rest near a light pole. 3 men then exited the van, and then they began attempting to stab people nearby. As you mentioned, the death toll now, 7 dead, 48 wounded. Police killed the 3 attackers. The question now, did they do it on their own or did they have any help? In the East End section of London, the neighborhood of Barking, in the last few hours there have been a series of raids, and as of now 12 people have been arrested. Not clear, Howie, to what, if any extent, those 12 people are connected to the carnage that took place just 16 hours ago. The investigation here continues.
Hopefully we'll find out soon. David Lee Miller, thanks for that live update from London. We appreciate it. Joining us now, Jillian Turner, White House national security official under George W. Bush and Barack Obama. Katie Pavlich, editor of townhall.com. Both are Fox News contributors. And Erin McPike, who covers the White House for Independent Journal Review. Jillian, to what extent are these attacks designed to instill fear in Britain, around the world, by generating saturation media coverage?
100%. That's pretty much, aside from killing as many people as possible during the attack itself, this is the purpose of those attacks. And to that degree, they're enjoying unprecedented success. In the last year, couple of years, this is something that ISIS has excelled at and really driven to new heights thanks to social media and the way that they reach out to the community of interested people, you know. By that I mean potential terrorists around the world, and help to get this going.
Thankfully, Katie, this is not a huge death toll, but the heavy coverage seems justified because what this attack does is it instills a sense of fear and concern that if you're on a bridge in London, if you're shopping at London's Borough Market, that you can't be entirely sure that you are safe.
Well, and that's one of the definitions of terrorism, right, is to instill fear and to not just take people's lives, which is the worst case scenario, but to try and make sure that people don't go out and enjoy their freedoms that they have in these Western countries like the UK, in the United States, and all over Europe. That's certainly something that they want to do. We also see in these reports that these men who got out of the van were wearing fake suicide vests in order to instill even more fear, which obviously they probably were connecting that to the recent Manchester attack. This is not something that seems to be isolated. This is not a lone wolf problem. We have 12 suspects arrested this morning in London, and also the 18th suspect who arrested in Manchester today as a result of that suicide bombing recently. And so this is ongoing. British officials and officials all over the world are clearly having a very hard time coming to terms with this, but they're having an impact on the way that people think about whether they want to go to a crowded area or to a concert with their children.
And Erin, President Trump reacted quickly, certainly, calling Prime Minister Theresa May, but also a series of tweets. And some found the first one odd. This was last night when the president retweeted the Drudge Report saying fears of new terrorist attack. This was after the initial ramming of pedestrians by the van, since he has access to all the top intelligence.
I'm sorry, the question is?
The question is, certainly we all want the president to speak out forcefully, and Twitter is his medium, but since he has more information than anybody else in America, some people thought it was odd that he was retreating.
Yeah, and it's possible that he didn't get a full briefing on it just yet. Maybe he's getting a full briefing this morning. In past White Houses, the president will get a briefing before the White House puts out a statement on the terrorist attack and what their plan is going forward, what they plan to do in terms of talking to other world leaders. And Jillian would certainly know this, but that is important, that these statements generally have to go through a number of layers of checks before they put them out to the public. Right. And the president is not doing that.
Well, you know, that also often put the White House behind news reports, but there's always this balance between being quick and making sure that you've got it nailed down. The president also tweeting today, Jillian, that we're not having a gun debate, as often follows these terror attacks, because this particular attack in London was carried out with a van and knives by 3 people who I guess have been shot dead. So it does show the terror problem in this country is far broader than just a debate about gun control.
I mean, to me, that's sort of a political point, but yes, I agree with it. I think that having the gun debate today would be, in the aftermath of yesterday's attack, would be a little bit useless.
But don't political points often follow these terror attacks as different political factions try to use the event, tragic as it is, to make arguments for their side?
Well, yes, and we see that with the gun debate, and we see that with the travel ban debate. Is a policy solution to these problems one or the other? Do we restrict gun access? Do we restrict access to the country via immigration and refugee status? To me, those are both political arguments, but they're made by both sides of the aisle. I think both are equally applicable to the problem of terrorism, so both are valid for discussion. At least from a media perspective, it's important to examine both of these because these are major issues for American voters.
We'll talk more about that. Kate, I've got to ask you about this tweet by a CNN host whose name is Reza Aslan. Let's put it up, and we're cleaning it up slightly. In the wake of the London attack, Aslan writes, "This piece of blank is not just an embarrassment to America and a stain on the presidency. He's an embarrassment to humankind." Now, I don't usually do this, but this guy has a show on CNN, and he called the president a piece of excrement. Within a day, I'm wondering whether he will still have a show on CNN.
I'm not going to speculate about what CNN is going to do in response, but you know, this again goes back to the double standard for the way that we treat the presidency. I think there would be a lot more attention on this today in all of the media if it was a conservative on Fox News who had a show tweeting about a Democratic president. The reaction would certainly be different, and there would be a lot more attention focused on it. It's unfortunate, and I just think it really shows where we are in the state of our politics today, that in the aftermath of a terrorist attack, this is the kind of name-calling that we see from the media towards the president.
If I might, I think it shows that there's no respect for the office. Never mind the politics or the policies of the individual. It shows a lack of respect for the importance of the
I will speculate. I would think that CNN would suspend that person for a week or two, as they have when other CNN reporters have editorialized on Twitter for things that have been less.
But is he a reporter, or is he...
He's a host. He has a
host,
show.
but
it's
he
not
might
a high-profile show.
He might be an opinion host.
And, you know, I don't mind even CNN hosts taking issue with the president's policies. This was a vicious personal attack, this language. All right. So the president was apparently watching Fox and Friends this morning. Reference was made to the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who said that there's no reason to be alarmed, addressing the people of his city, because there'll be an increased police presence in the coming days. President tweeting, "At least 7 dead, 48 wounded in terror attack," and mayor of London says there is no reason to be alarmed! Exclamation points. President reacts to TV in real time.
Yeah, and that puts him in the same category as a pundit, and he's supposed to be the president. Now, you know, the mayor of London also said other things like, "We will never let these cowards win, and we will never be cowed by terrorism." I actually think a lot of the coverage after these attacks are fairly routine at this point. And I think we actually need to do a better job asking about next steps, and not just those political issues, but what actually a number of countries are doing about counterterrorism, because I don't think we're getting to the bottom of that at all.
We'll come back to this subject, but let me turn now to the momentous climate change decision, the president pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, garnering publicity worldwide, much of it negative. Here's just a brief look at some of what was said on the airwaves.
It is hard to think of the worst thing this president has done, but so far, this might just be the one.
This will be the day that the United States resigned as the leader of the free world.
We just watched a dangerous little man give a very, very scary speech.
The left immediately became hysterical, even more than usual.
Katie Pavich, leave aside the pundits for a moment. Did the straight news reporting on President Trump's decision here, which was obviously not popular in many quarters and in much of the world, was it fair, or did it clearly tilt against the president?
I think that it was more about attacking the president and his decision than it was about looking at what the Paris Climate Agreement actually was. This was something that was agreed to by the Obama administration. I think a lot of people, based on the coverage of the election and all of the news that we've had, really have kind of forgotten about what the Paris Climate Agreement did, what it was, what the obligations of the United States were. During the coverage, I didn't really hear about why are we in this? Why did President Obama make this decision? What are the binding factors for the United States, and how does it affect the American economy. What was the thinking behind the president's decision to pull out? It was more about calling the president a climate denier, saying that he was committing an act of treason against the American people and the world for pulling out of this agreement. There wasn't really a lot of substance and context to what the agreement actually was.
Some exceptions, I would say. But Jillian, you may disagree with the president's decision, and that's fine. But it would be hard to look at the totality of the coverage, and you look at all the newspaper articles and the way it was framed and what a setback this was, and U.S. giving up its global leadership role, and to say that it wasn't largely negative. Do you agree?
Oh, I think that as a whole, the media coverage of this decision was overwhelmingly, sort of crushingly negative. And while I don't agree with the president's decision to renege on the agreement, I think the bigger point here is that it seems that a majority of my fellow Americans might actually disagree with me, in the sense that this is something that President Trump was very upfront and very forward about on the campaign trail. Almost, we were discussing in the green room, it sort of was a campaign platform issue for him. So he certainly has a mandate.
It's not surprising.
Right. My personal disagreement.
Right.
I agree with all of the points that you both made here, but I do think in flipping the script a little bit, the White House has not done a good job setting up for him making this decision. And in fact, we saw, there were reports that Gary Cohn and Ivanka Trump were trying to change his decision.
Right, so there was a debate within the White House.
I understand that, but they didn't spend time messaging this over the past 2 weeks and building support for his decision and explaining why
he hadn't made a final decision. And there were leaks from the White House that pretty clearly indicated that the president, unless he changed his mind at the last moment, was going to do this.
I think based on his decision, regardless of whether they would have built up the support that you're talking about, he would have been criticized because, again, the coverage was not about what the climate agreement means for the country. It was about the president being a denier and his decision to tell the world that he's not interested in protecting the environment, which, by the way, we're not hearing a whole lot about the fact that he said, I'd like to renegotiate this deal. I care about the environment.
Really
Let's redo
because it was
this.
the next thing the president said, and it kind of got dismissed by the press as if he hadn't even said it, because it's almost like everyone was geared up for either yes or no, we're staying in, not going in. You know what really surprised me, Katie? Hours after the president's speech announcing this, MSNBC, and liberals care passionately about the climate change. They all led with Russia. Chris Matthews, Comey is going to testify in a week. 8 o'clock show, the 9 o'clock show, the 10 o'clock show, all about the Russia investigation.
Well, maybe the climate change issue on the scale of what MSNBC thinks is obviously a lower issue, and Russia has been running their coverage for weeks. It's been working for them. Their ratings are higher than they've been in years. Clearly they are going to stay on that story because it's been good for them. They think that the American people are interested in it.
Now, I've said that I thought that last week Fox News played down some of the developments in the Russia investigation, but just the fact that it happened on the day of the climate change decision, whether you wanted to attack it, praise it, or try to analyze it, just struck me as an interesting moment. Let me get a break, panel. You can let us know what you think. Media Buzz at foxnews.com, and we'll be right back.